We are live. All right.
Sweet.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to what I think is Ep 5 of the bitB Cash podcast. I'm here with fellow bitB Cash coach and also Run It Once elite coach, Psek1. And our guest today is the boy legend, Ben Raven, better known as Benabadbeat, long-time mid to high stakes pro on PokerStars and fully qualified psychotherapist and original founding member of the Gay UK crew. So we're delighted to have you. Thanks for coming on.
One of the forefathers, not the leading forefather, I wouldn't like to say.
No?
I think Frank probably started.
You're pretty central. You're pretty central. So yeah, I thought just to kind of kick things off, most people I'm sure watching this will know exactly who you are, will have followed your very popular blog. I think one of the most viewed blogs ever on 2+2, Mastering Mental Game and Mental Health. But for those people who don't know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about your story coming up through the ranks, and anything else that's on your mind.
Anything else?
That's an expansive
How much time have you got? Yeah. I think, as you said, I think most people know about the poker story. So I'll keep it kind of brief. I mean, I just started playing with a couple of guys that people know from the poker community and other forefathers of the Gay UK crew, which were SMB, and coinflip_Psy, and none other than Peter804. We all used to start playing back in the day, playing with friends, playing like £5 home games. Basically just fell in love with the game like absolutely instantly. So until I started playing poker, I was like an avid player of Halo 2.
Okay.
And I played Halo 2 for like my whole teenage years, and I just loved gaming. I just loved the strategy of it as well. Yeah. And then basically when I found poker, Halo just got dropped, and then we were playing poker all the time. Yeah. So when we were like 17 years old, we edited our provisional licenses on MS Paint so that we could pass as 18 years old.
Oh my God.
What? Did that work?
Well, it did work, yeah. Unfortunately, because I lost a lot of money playing on that first poker site. It was known as At the Races back then.
Oh, yeah. This one, where they dramatically altered the structure of the game.
Yes, exactly. So I was playing on that site for a while with Simon, and we were playing like 5p, 10p games. And we managed to get our ID through, and we were playing on it all the time. And at the time I was working, this was when I was working at a Tesco. I was stacking meat on the shelves at a Tesco, and we basically were just playing like all hours and then going into work, and that's just how it all started. And then when we were 18, we ended up going to the casino, playing a bit more online, successfully losing most of my paychecks from Pizza Express at the time. And then, we just started moving up, and pretty much that was the history from there. That's how it all started anyway.
Yeah. For those people who don't know, at Bet the Races, I'm pretty sure you told me that you could add chips to your stack at any point during the hand.
So for a period you could do that.
So you could like face a shove from your opponent for more than what you have, quickly top up your account like extra, shove over the top. They could then do the same. It was like, it was crazy. It was like essentially infinitely deep. Oh, well, no. You always have the option of going infinitely deep, but your opponents, obviously, you can't guarantee it.
Some sick rules in metagame related to that as well. Like some like crazy bluffs you could make if.
But then after that, we were playing on another site called Paddy Power, and my mate Si was playing on a site called Poker United. I mean, I feel so old now because these are sites that are just dead in the water now. Yeah. And there was this one day we were both playing at Simon's house. We used to play in his garage all the time. And we were like, I would like see a hand happen and I was like laughing at what happened. And then it was really, really weird because then we kept seeing the same hands that were going on. And we were on 2 different skins, but we didn't know we were playing on the same network, in the same house, on the same table next to each other. And then that's when like there was a whole problem with colluding, and then they basically separated that if you're on the same IP, you couldn't play.
Well,
so yeah, it was a bit of a weird awakening at that point.
Yeah, shit. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah, we made a bunch of things. Like we're just gonna kind of go with the flow. I guess kind of what we need to talk about now is like the whole situation, the global pandemic, because you have some circumstances that mean it's going to be like particularly rough for you and your girlfriend, right?
Yeah. So yeah, she has an autoimmune disease, and it means that she's been asked by the NHS to not leave the house at all for at least 3 months. And because I think it's like a shield, something to do with a shield. So because I live with her, I'm basically not allowed to either. So we're just trying to make the most of, I don't know, organizing ourselves to kind of get through this day by day. But how are you guys dealing with it as well? So you're in Mexico, aren't you?
I'm in Mexico, yeah. I kind of jumped early. I wasn't planning on coming out here for another few months, but you know, given the rate at which borders were closing and stuff was getting locked down, I thought, you know, because my fiance is from here, I thought I just really need to get out and basically to spend lockdown with her rather than like not knowing when we're going to see each other and not knowing, just, you know, we're due to get married May the 15th.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of just had to make sure I was out here. There's a very low number of confirmed cases in Mexico, but obviously it's like a less developed country, and that's more because like it's extremely hard to get tested, and there's no testing for, like, if you don't have it, you're not getting tested essentially, you know. So,
did you say there were people like spluttering on your plane over?
The plane was fucking horrendous. It was the worst journey.
It sounds like my worst nightmare, that situation.
It was like something out of a movie. It was awful. You know, like if there's an apocalypse movie, right? There's like some idiots who don't realize what's going on. That was my plane. That was my plane from Birmingham to fucking to Mexico. So people were just like boozing, shouting, screaming at each other. I'm sitting there with my face covered and my gloves on. It's hot as fuck, and they're all like looking at me weird, like. It was just like a plane full of boomers. It was absolutely terrible. I spoke to a lady at TUI. So my flight was with TUI, who are like I think Belgian-based company who do like package holidays and stuff. And she said that like because everywhere was closing their border, like the day I booked my flight, Cyprus completely closed their border, and it was like, okay, everyone who's got a holiday to Cyprus in the next month is trying to rebook a holiday right now, and they're basically just taking anywhere that's going. So demand was actually super high, and I got the last seat on the plane.
That's crazy, because you'd have thought it'd be kind of the reverse, right? People would be starting to get into lockdown rather than looking to kind of, shit, I better go on holiday whilst I still can, which seems...
More
Are you settled up at home as well, Patrick?
Yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, my family's kind of worried about me because I'm in London, and obviously relative to the rest of the UK, there's tons of cases here. But I'm just here. My girlfriend's been working from home for like the last 10 days or something.
Oh, good stuff.
So like in the last 3 days, I've left the house like once and doing like home workouts, things like that. So just trying to be kind of vigilant about it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not so bad, honestly. Like we're super lucky as poker players to be in the industry that we are whilst this is going on, because everything seems to be kind of kicking off. Like games are really, really good, tons of traffic.
Yeah. We are, but like there's also kind of the flip side of that it's like really easy to kind of detach yourself just because you're a poker player from everything that's going on, and actually allowing yourself to be like, this is actually really shit, and because that's the reality, it is shit, right? It's not just like great for a boot camp and for like for grinding for months, even though it is some of those things, it's pretty tough as well.
Yeah, of course. It's like a worldwide disaster.
Yeah. Our local community, because we can't go out, we can't exercise outside or anything like that. But there's like community apps where people are like dropping us off groceries, and the whole community is coming together. Yeah, it's crazy. Like we put a message on saying like, we have no groceries, we're looking for some support. Got like 8 messages within like 15 minutes, just being like, yeah, right, I'm in the area, I can go here, do you need anything else? Do you need medicine? So like if nothing else, everyone's kind of being brought together in some shape or form, right? Yeah, I mean, I almost felt sympathetic towards Boris today, so
it's kind of nice to hear that positive stories like you say there, because every other story you hear in the media is like photos of like also fake old photos of people out partying in London saying like, oh, these people aren't on lockdown. I mean, the photos aren't relevant, like a lot of them. And yeah, it's like media sensationalism. It's kind of nice to hear that actually the communities are knitting together. Like I think yesterday it was announced like 500,000 people in the UK volunteered to help with the NHS. Which is like another like kind of pretty crazy story too. It's like kind of nice that
I volunteered for that, and it's the issue is now is like kind of resources for the people to go through 500,000 applications and then see who's kind of either qualified, who's DBS checked, like to work with certain groups and that kind of thing. So there's going to be a bit of a lag between those applications being sent, processed, to then people being referred to people to talk to them. Yeah.
I was sort of really worried about, because the early UK response was like, oh, herd immunity, and like, oh, it's all gonna be fine. I was super worried about it for a while, but now that everyone's panicking in a weird way, I feel less worried about it, you know?
Yeah.
Just like,
try telling the idea of herd immunity to someone with an autoimmune disease. They're just like, bro, like, no.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that was not so smart.
Yeah, I couldn't really understand the response immediately, because like whilst herd immunity theoretically might work, you're kind of saying, well, actually, we're just going to bear the brunt of the cost of that, which is like, I think they were saying they needed 60 to 70% of the population to actually get it in order for there to be herd immunity. It's like, okay, so let's just accept the fact shitloads of people are going to die then, rather than just go and do more like extreme measures of lockdown and things like this. It's kind of, I was kind of in the same boat as you, Donald. It seemed pretty questionable.
Yeah,
totally.
So you've so you were seeing clients, right? You were seeing psychotherapy clients. You had an office, I think, 1 day a week or something like that.
Yeah, so I rent a room for 1 day a week in Hackney, and I see clients privately. They are, for all intents and purposes, non-poker clients. They are real life people. It's so hard to describe it like this, because obviously everyone's a real life person, but they're not specific for poker related things. Yeah.
So, but you've brought all of that online, and like, so using like TeamViewer or Zoom or something like that.
Yeah, Zoom, exactly. But there are like quite a lot of issues and a lot of like practical, psychological, societal issues that kind of have been brought up with the idea of working therapeutically online, which on the one hand is really great for my skill set to work with poker players, because the majority of my poker clients, unless they're in London, will be over Skype. But on the other hand, it kind of does bring up a whole load of issues. So like, firstly, I guess there's like, so therapeutically, it's so important to be able to sit with somebody in the room, just for the fact you can pick up on micro expressions. Energetically, you can kind of feel things a lot more, just by being in the presence of somebody else. You know when someone's angry, you know when someone's upset, you know when someone's anxious. But mainly, so like, there's this theory called transference. I don't know if you have heard of transference.
Transference, like you transfer something from one person to another?
Effectively, yeah. So like, as a therapist, it's really important to be available to like embody the emotion of the client who may be unable to express it, unable to feel it, but it's kind of in the field, in the room. And I find it really difficult, or much more difficult, to kind of tune into that emotional experience that I'm picking up off somebody else when it's over a Skype. Because sometimes the internet's pretty good, sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's like a bit of a lag, or those moments like quite literally being lost in translation by there being a physical barrier, albeit you can still see them. That's like the first issue. So not so much of an issue, but one thing I'm kind of working with. Secondly, it's confidentiality. That's like a huge thing. So I'm sure it comes as no surprise that the majority of what people talk about are relationships. So whether or not that be relationships with parents, relationships with partners, past relationships. But the great thing about the therapeutic space is that it offers a foundation and a field by which it contains the content and the material of what you're talking. It's like safe. It's like people can't hear. So, for example, I've got to be really careful what I say because obviously confidentiality is really important. But there are situations where people might not want to say a certain thing because they might be afraid of who's eavesdropping. They might be wanting to talk about the relationship they have with a partner, but their partner might be in the other room.
Of course, yes.
So it puts up a whole load for therapeutic work to take place. There needs to be like a willingness and an openness and a freedom to express what you want to express. So it's really, really hard for some people if they're in a situation where they feel in some way hampered or kind of limited to what they can say. So I'm noticing that as a real kind of challenge because that's not something I've ever had to face because it's confidential. Yeah.
Do you think there's any kind of way around that? Or is that just going to be kind of how it is because of the nature of, like you say, people might be in the same building or whatever?
Well, there is going to be some extent to that for sure. There are methods that I've been thinking about and discussing with my supervision group as a way of kind of managing this. That is, firstly, hopefully the people in the home know that you have a session. You make an agreement that for that 50 minutes, the person in the session is going to be wearing earphones, and then everyone else in the house is going to be wearing earphones listening to music. The other is that people take their 50 minutes of exercise during that period. And the last one so far, which I think is a really good idea, is you have your session sitting inside your car, if you have a car.
Okay.
So it offers an environment that is private, it's familiar, it's safe, and no one can hear or eavesdrop. So these are just some ideas, and obviously we're very much at the beginning of this process, as much as people maybe don't want to admit it, of kind of not only in the therapeutic space, but in our lives, kind of making things work as much as they would in every other setting or to the best of our abilities. So we're kind of navigating that at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a quarantine, it's going to have an effect on people. Like I see even I've been calling with my family and stuff like that, like WhatsApp calling with my family. And in fact, everyone I know is like sharing way more stuff on like WhatsApp and stuff. I'm sure you guys all you're in WhatsApp groups from whatever, all sorts of gatherings and stuff. People are mostly sharing funnies and like whatever, just like sharing a shitload more than they normally are like online. And I think that's a symptom of people just like feeling that lack of like social interaction. You kind of need that, we're like tribal beasts, and it's like, it's good that we're stopping people getting corona, but it's like bad, especially people who are lonely and don't have a lot of social contact anyway, to feel like trapped inside your house. It's like, it's tough. There's something claustrophobic about it. People don't like it,
Well, yeah, and I think that's like a really, really important thing to say, because the experience that we're having, ironically, the only group that has experienced this are the people at risk. And the people who are probably going to manage this the best are the ones that are either going to be happy at home or they're going to be in hospital and they're going to be dying. They're that whole bracket of people who, like World War II, who have experienced what this is like, a massive world change. They're the only people who kind of experience it. And for everyone else, it's completely uncharted territory. So the normal circumstances under which we would deal with anxiety or fear are completely thrown out of whack, because this is not an experience that any of us have had. So it brings up that whole other dilemma, really.
Yeah, for sure.
I also think it's really, really difficult. Like, obviously it's tough for all of us, but I think it's tougher when you're living on your own. Like, we're all in a situation where we've got like our partners in the same houses as or whatever. I was kind of thinking that like Cam, for example, is living on his own in London, right? Like, I can imagine for guys like him, it is like so much tougher, because you have literally no social interaction. Like, even if it's the same person, you're at least able to speak to them and like spend time with them, things like that. But like having literally no one except for, I guess, FaceTime calls. Like FaceTime, I guess, is a pretty big solution for most people in Skype, but it seems really, really, really hard. So I guess we're kind of fortunate in that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we are. I think so. But yeah, and it kind of comes back to like, what are people doing with this? What are you guys doing with all of the space and that you have, because even though I know we're poker players and we've had a lot of space, and we do, this is still different, right? It still feels different, doesn't it? I don't know if it does for you. It does for me.
For sure. I had a day off on Tuesday, and like try and take one day off, full day off a week, and it was like, what are we gonna do? You know, it's like it's brutal. It's like you can't. You have the option of going a place, but like it feels irresponsible, and that sort of that it's like guilt. You know, it's like I want to go and do this thing. It's not much to ask to just like take a walk outside, go to the beach or something. But it's like by doing that, you signal to everyone else that's okay to do that. And like we're in a position where if we catch it, we're pretty, me and Patrick are in a position where if we catch it, it's not the hugest deal. Like probably we'll be okay health wise, and it's other people that bear the cost of our actions. You know, so it's not even just like a pros cons thing where it's like, do I want to do this? It's like, do I want to live in a world where people like me do things like this? You know, it's a different sort of ethical question. Just doing simple things like going to the shop for food and stuff like this. So it is definitely different for sure. Yeah, very different.
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering what is your or both of your emotional response to Corona? Like, does it evoke anything when you think about it? When you think about what's happening in the world? Does that make you feel anxious? Does it make you feel like scared, or does it make you feel like, oh well, like I'll be okay?
It was more like I normally I consume almost no news, like almost exactly no news. But when I got home from Mexico last time, it was just the start of February, and it was really taking off, like the whole in China and like the first few cases in Italy and stuff like that. And I read a lot of the business finance investing subforum of 2+2. And guys are obviously like super analyzing it early because they're trying to get an edge on markets. Basically, they're trying to like figure out whether to sell or buy and all this kind of thing. And the sort of doomsday sayers were saying this is going to get completely out of control. Like, for example, the situation in Italy, there was like 10 cases but like 6 deaths. And guys were like, if there's been 6 deaths, it's been there for 3 or 4 weeks, and already thousands of people have it. That's going to turn into an absolute shit show. And it sounded so dramatic at the time, and then it started happening, and it was like, holy shit, this is real, you know. And everything kind of kept playing out exactly as some guys, notably Toothsayer, were predicting. And so when I saw I was it's like a weird feeling of helplessness, but also frustration. Like the initial government reaction, I had like a weak morning where I like literally wept. Because it was like people are going to die based on, you know, they had these guys modeling the situation. It's like a completely novel situation. You can't model it, you know. And based on the model, they were like, we don't need to panic yet. And it was like, you know, there's blood on your hands for that. People are going to die that didn't need to die because these morons have made a computer program and trust it, you know. So I would say like, a weird feeling of like, sort of overwhelmed, sort of feeling helpless, and also like there's no clarity to anything. We don't know where things are going to be in 1 week or 1 month or 1 year, you know. So definitely like evoked an emotional response, certainly for me, and I think for most people. I would say it's less now because like I feel like I've taken care of those I love, and I know that they're like treating the situation seriously. And like the government and stuff is taking it more seriously now as well. I know the lockdown situation is like really quite extreme in the UK, so I feel less worried now than I did before. But definitely, it's been like something.
Yeah, to add on to that, I kind of agree. I was super anxious when I had strong opinion, like maybe incorrectly so, but I had a kind of strong opinion that like Boris Johnson wasn't really doing enough at the start. And I was like really anxious that like if you looked at sort of some of the countries that had actually performed pretty well, if you can like say performed well in like the sense of low cases, low numbers of deaths and stuff. A lot of those countries had just gone into lockdown, and I had super large amounts of anxiety, particularly living in London, which is arguably like one of the worst places you could be in Europe right now. When the government was I kind of felt like it's probably partially the unknown and the uncertainty, but also like the lack of control. Like in these kind of scenarios, for me, it feels like regardless of what I do, like I can behave ethically and like it might not matter. Like it matters like kind of in a micro level, but not on a macro level, because if other people don't like behave in the same way, then it's also going to be fucked. And I had kind of a conversation with my mum, and she was like trying to calm me down a bit, I think. And she was saying like, oh, people in the war went through this, like you had to turn your lights off. Certain times during the war, things like this, so that you couldn't get bombed, all this sort of stuff. They couldn't see the lights from the sky. And the issue I had with that was kind of like, yeah, but that's because those people, if they act in that way, it reduces the likelihood of their death. But the problem is, in this case, you need people who aren't likely to die to act out of their own self-interests for the good of everyone else. And like, this is the kind of issue I had. Like all of the authoritarian states, relatively speaking, we're doing much better than the Western states, because it kind of feels like one of these situations where you need someone to put their foot down and be like, right, guys, this is what's happening. And this is just how it is.
It's a really, really good point, because, you know, well, how many more people die from smoking than they do from plane crashes. And yet, because it's so much easier for the human brain to imagine what it is like to plummet to your death from the sky, that evokes way more fear and anxiety than the idea of like smoking 20 cigarettes a day and it inevitably killing you anyway. It's about how you kind of picture the fate of what you're kind of perceiving. And I think with COVID-19, there's even if you go look for it, you don't really see people. It's not like a graphic or a kind of a bloody or like a violent death. It's like a shutting down of the organs. I think I have seen a couple of videos of people trying to speak and being very short breath, and that's filled me with anxiety and made it more real, actually. However, I think that if it was something like, just if we're going to be completely overt, like something like people are spewing blood in the streets, then there would be so much more. People would have got on board way sooner. But like, I mean, and the problem is like the language that people used around it, for sure.
Yeah, the availability heuristic, right? It's like what is easily imaginable, you are more likely to imagine first, and that's the other thing as well. Like I think I haven't watched any, to be fair, but I've seen people posting videos of like, I had COVID-19 and I didn't have any symptoms, and it's like, yeah, but people in hospitals don't make fucking video blogs. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You're not gonna be like, I have COVID-19.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So.
But that, I kind of was thinking about another realm to it, because it was interesting, Donna. You said that you think most people feel anxious about it.
Have felt at least at some point.
And in my mind, I was kind of like, perhaps, but I'm not sure if the poker community feels that anxious about it.
Really?
And I was kind of wondering, like, I mean, this is a thing I've been thinking about a lot more in generally, but like whether, like, I personally, just to speak from my own experience, because it's easiest, right? I've noticed I've been playing way more poker. And I don't think that is because I've had more hours to play poker. I personally think that's because I feel pretty soothed when I play poker. My whole brain is going into one activity. I'm not feeling anxious. I might can kind of completely drop everything else, and then I can feel pretty kind of secure and comfortable for a period. And then at the end of the session, like, the anxiety will still be there. I don't know if that is kind of has any resonance, or if there's actually a separation between normal people and poker players in that.
I saw a tweet from one guy. I didn't know who it was, but it was like someone I followed, liked it or whatever. And it was like, so if my timeline is to be believed, the whole world is going out to party while every poker player is voluntarily self-isolating. It's like, I don't know if it's like poker guys maybe tend to be a little bit more introvert anyway, and kind of like, you know, like to get an excuse to like get a good grind in and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people in my circle have gone through a stage of like apathy with regards to it as well. You know, it's like you consume some news about it, and then you consume more, and you start thinking, oh, what about the government and all this kind of stuff. And then you just get to the kind of stage of like, all right, it is what it is. I've got to focus on my life, you know, just like kind of get, what's the word? Like, you get tired of it. You just get over information.
I think there's quite a lot of information to be kind of understood in that process, though. When you just say like, all right, and you push it and then go like, I'm just going to get on with my life. There's a whole thing that's gone through in that moment of like pushing something away or not kind of like engaging with that bit to just kind of get on with life.
Yeah, it's like I read a lot of like the Stoics, like I like reading philosophy and stuff, and it's like the main idea is you basically separate stuff into like what you have agency over and what you do not, and like you have agency over whether or not you like follow the lockdown protocol well, and you have agency over whether you like choose to play a session or whatever. You have agency over your actions, but like how the government in some country responds to the, you know, it's like you have no control over this. So it's like more I tend to find it helpful to just like deal with myself and try and make sure all my actions are how I'd like them to be, and kind of let everything else take care of itself.
Yeah, fair.
Well, you're right that it's probably like, you know, it causes me mental anxiety to like think about it all and how many people might die and stuff like that. So
yeah, I suppose maybe being a bit more explicit with what I was getting at was like, I think that our responses or individuals' responses to coronavirus is quite an interesting lens by which to understand how we manage anxiety in normal or different circumstances. And I know that kind of I've written most of my dissertation now, and I told you the topic. Professional poker player and psychotherapy training, like the lived experience. And like a lot of the realizations that I had were, well, a lot of I'm tussling with the idea of, am I the way I am because I started playing poker, or did I start playing poker because of the way I am? And I think that a lot of the discussion was around like the idea of anxiety being managed through the means of playing poker because of the way in which it's a one-track, very logical, doesn't have much emotion is shunned or whatever. So that was the reason I was kind of interested in whether or not you guys felt anxious about it and what you did with the anxiety, whether or not it was just a pushing it away and like to not feel it, or whether it was like to engage with it and then be like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what am I doing with that anxiety, if that makes sense?
It's kind of interesting because I hadn't really thought about it until like too much until kind of what you said. But then when you kind of mentioned about poker being kind of an escape, I mean, and then I sort of like questioned, like, is that what I'm doing? And like quite possibly to an extent, like if I think about my day now, like you say, you don't necessarily have too much more time than before, or at least I don't find that way. Like I have less time because often I would go out and exercise or whatever. But like in terms of getting up in the morning, like realistically, if I wanted to play more poker in my old schedule, I could have easily fit it in. But yeah, like you say, I am playing more. Like, yeah, possibly it's kind of to do with burying your head in the sand a little bit, I think. And then go on.
The whole world's playing more poker for one thing. It's like outside activities aren't allowed anymore, so you got to do some inside activities. And then it's also like, we have George posted something to like our little coaching group the other day where it's like a shitload of people have lost their jobs and like drastic changes to like how people make money. You know, the government's trying to bail out everyone, self-employed people and all this kind of thing. Meanwhile, our job got like substantially more profitable. There's like probably triple the action that there is at like mid-highstakes on Stars and certainly on other sites as well. So it's like, it feels like a pretty rational response to like, yeah, we're inside. You're on double. You're getting paid double time to do your job now. If I can play more poker, yeah, why not?
It's really interesting to hear you put it like that when you could easily frame it as like the flip of there are more vulnerable people with no money at home and we're winning money off them. I'm not saying I'm playing devil's advocate there because I'm sitting here playing poker and stuff, but that's a very important like flip side to. It's easy to engage with the bit of like, I'm going to be motivated because I'm at home and this is my job, to engage with the side that kind of feels quite safe, than as opposed to engage with the side that isn't so safe and quite sticky and uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well,
which I don't really want to engage with myself, but I try to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting question, like whether it is immoral to play poker, whether it's immoral to like try and play poker with people who are bad at playing poker. I certainly do that, but like, yeah, it's like, have you thought about? I'm sure both of you guys have thought about that, and kind of what's your view? Is play poker immoral?
Yeah. See, this feels quite personal, but I'll just share a bit anyway because this is part of the dissertation as well. I kind of explore the moral dilemma that I feel when I will be sitting playing poker, winning money, and then I can go sit with somebody who's barely even able to pay for a session for £10 or £15, and they're like scraping money together to pay. And I do feel, well, I'm aware that there is a feeling of guilt. I'm also aware of a stronger feeling of trying to do similar to what you said, like I'm doing my job, there's like money to be made, and like trying to split off and cut those parts away from myself. Whereas I know like that doesn't, just because I cut them off, that doesn't mean they stop existing. They just kind of reside and then they come up somewhere else later. But that's something I found really, really, really challenging because it's very hard to justify taking advantage of potentially vulnerable people in one setting and then claiming to be there at the service of a vulnerable person in another setting.
I see, yeah.
And I think the relevant factor is vulnerable here because you don't know who you're winning money off playing poker. And I think that is the thing for me that I explored again in the dissertation that allows me to continue playing poker, because I don't think I could do it live. I don't think I'd be able to sit with the person who I'm winning money off and not knowing whether or not that's affecting their life. I can dissociate enough when I play online, which I'm not justifying in any shape or form, but like it's like a real internal struggle about trying to engage with the dissociated state of myself that I'm aware I have. But I guess the conclusion I kind of came to is if I fully engage with that dissociated self state, then I fundamentally have to stop playing poker like there and then. I can't justify it to myself. So it's a real sticky, horrible, unknown realm, which I'm sure you can see.
What do you think?
It's possible to come to some kind of like you're almost never gonna kind of know, in my opinion, like the answer to that question. Like it seems extremely difficult to answer that because there's merit to what you're saying, but equally, I mean, it's also very much like you are kind of like living for yourself. It isn't your means to kind of exist and what have you, and yeah, making kind of the most out of your own situation. And there's also, I don't know how much this argument holds up, but maybe it's something you could touch on if you have an opinion, either of you. But like, there is the other argument that these people who are vulnerable playing poker would potentially, if poker did not exist, find other means to kind of, for want of a better way to say it, kind of like dust it off, you know?
I mean, it feels like a fairly relevant statement.
The issue, you kind of get what I'm touching on, right?
I do. Yeah. The issue I have with this, and I remember when I was 18 and I was working. This is my last job that I did. I was working doing door-to-door sales for Sky, and I got zero wage, and it was 100% commission. It was fucking brutal. I was out in the winter. It was awful. But I remember having a conversation with my brother-in-law, and we were talking about like selling things to people, and that was the kind of the way the discussion went, like being able to sell things to people. And my argument was, well, if they're not going to buy it from me, then they're going to buy it from someone else. So like I'm going to like do all the tricks in the book to make a sale. Right. And then he made like a really, really good comeback, and he said, so if you were to assume that kids in Africa are going to be sold guns, they're going to find guns from somewhere, then why wouldn't you sell them guns? I was like, that's completely different because there's a huge consequence. But I think the point that he was making was that the justification of if you're not going to do it, someone else is going to do it. You have to take responsibility for your own moral compass, as opposed to kind of like try and make it right for everyone. And it was an extreme example, but it still has some kind of, I don't know, bearing.
The way I see it, it's like there's sort of levels to it. It's like, I think the primary responsibility is on people who are like advertising poker. It's like, I do think that's immoral to be like, come play poker, you might win a lot of money, without saying like, but these guys have been doing it for 10 years and this percent of, like, if in trading stuff, they have to say this percent of accounts lose money. And that for poker would be fucking eye watering, right? It would be like 95%, depending how you play for. So I do think the sites have a level of responsibility. And then, well, no, sites is second. First is personal responsibility. It's like people, some people have circumstances in their life and for whatever reason they get into gambling and stuff like that. But some people kick the habit, it's not impossible. So it's a brutal thing to say, but like I it's very hard for me to like deal with the fact that there is problem gambling out there when it's got to be the own person that cares enough about themselves and cares enough about the people around them to change their behavior.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question. It's a wild goose chase to some extent.
The last thing I think is like the whole thing of like what you said about if they're not going to buy from me, they're going to buy from someone else. That's arguably true about Sky TV subscriptions. I don't think that's true for like guns to kids in Africa, but I mean, it's definitely true for online poker, right? Especially like at a certain level. It's like if someone sits 500 NL and I choose not to take the seat because like I feel bad for them or I don't want to take their money or something, there's still going to be 20 people on the wait list in less than a minute or something, So it's like, definitely, if I didn't exist, problem gambling would be exactly as rampant as it is now, right? So it's like, there is an argument to be said that like I profit from their loss, therefore, that has to be immoral to some extent.
Yeah, complicit, definitely, to some extent.
But
or entirely.
Geez, if it's going to be me or Stan that takes the money, I want it to be me.
It's a question that you can go around for forever and not really have an answer. And I got really triggered in a 2+2 blog a few days ago, just by the notion of like, you can't be a perfect person, and like just because the justification from this person was basically saying like, you may as well like go live your life in the open world with Corona and just get on with your life and do what you want, because for the simple fact that like, but like they were saying like you're a poker player and like you take money off vulnerable people all the time, you don't know what's going to happen to them. So if you don't care about them, then why would you care? And like if as soon as you get into these kind of black and white,
everyone like
but if you get into black and white thinking like that, I think that it becomes pointless for starters, but also like a losing battle. And I think it's about finding compromise, or at least asking yourself the question, which is what I'm trying to do. And I can definitely say with certainty I've been focusing on this very topic for nearly 5 years of my training, and I still haven't come to a place. I've talked about it in therapy. I've talked about it in groups. I've written about it. I've journaled about it. And like, still, I'm not in a place where I kind of have a definitive place of landing. Yeah. So that's all you can really give it time and see how it changes and develops over time.
It's like that with a lot of things as well, right? It's like there's people out there who believe that having children is immoral because there's kids from broken homes and bad situations and stuff, which you could adopt, which implicitly by having your own kid just so that it looks like you or whatever, you are denying them like love and care that they desperately need. And it's like
we're going down a rabbit hole here. We're going down
exactly. But it's like Jorge's written here, like everything is some kind of gambling activity, and like there's moral dimensions to all sorts of decisions you make. Like people eat meat, you know what I mean? And it's not as if that's been like cleared up from like arguments on Facebook or some shit. So it's like there are moral quandaries that you can't just like X equals Y, therefore we've solved this and behave in such a way. So it's worth discussing though, right? It's like something that never gets talked about.
Leading on from what George was saying here about Stan and how he would rather win the money than Stan. George had a question right for Ben during the podcast about
I'm afraid
rational. You have this D7, right?
What? The penalties? No, I'll write the question.
I was going to say, is it going to be a troll or is it going to be a serious question?
No, serious question. About why the hatred towards other poker players that we face at the tables, right?
Yeah.
George has a particular hatred towards Stan, I think it's fair to say.
Stan is one of many players that George has hatred.
I wholeheartedly believe this comes back to what I said before around I don't think I could play poker at a live poker table because I don't think I can engage with the fact that I'm winning money off an actual human being, like logically. I think that's similar for George or for anyone who hates another player. I think the online avatar, the online realm allows enough disconnection between making contact with another human being on the other side of that screen name that it allows you to project all of your hate into one thing and then for that to be okay, rational and justified. And there's no consequence. There's absolutely no consequence of hating someone online because as long as you're not being like trolling them online, like writing that you hate them and whatever. But I totally believe it's a disconnection between like perceiving them as like another human with like their own experiences.
Yeah. I think so. Whenever you meet a poker, like I can think of one time I've met a poker guy and I wasn't like, this guy's a cool guy, I like this guy, you know. Where it's like, yeah, it's much easier.
Who was it?
Don't say. So I mean, it's like my fiance's little sister was also like dating with some poker guy, a Spanish guy. And you know how like the first thing you do is like be like, so who are you on Stars? And like, have we played together? And he just like wouldn't tell me. It's a super secret. And like we were drinking and stuff. It was like the end of the night. So I was like, so seriously, you're not going to tell me? And he was like, no, I'm not, I don't want to. But I know some guys you play with. And I was just like, all right, whatever, man.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, that might mean one of two things, right? He's either some end boss who doesn't want people to know, or the reverse, you know?
I think we can assume it's the latter. Pretty comfortably.
Yes. Dude, I'm actually sitting in his chair now that I think about it.
He might be watching this right now.
I think.
You're scum, man.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to George has also asked, do you still enjoy playing poker? That's a good question.
I love playing poker. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I think that just touching on what I said before. I think that playing poker satisfies a once unconscious need that I feel like is now more conscious, and that is to alleviate having to feel whatever emotion that might be present. I think that it serves as much of a purpose of like managing my own emotional landscape as much as it does like me enjoying the game and just loving the fact that poker is an amazing game and I love how it's evolved and changed. Preferred it when it was street poker, but I still do love it now, even with all the theory changes. But for me, I think honestly, it's impossible for me to separate the conscious things I get from poker and the unconscious things I get from poker. I mean, I'm not going to go into that again, but that's pretty much how I feel about poker.
Yeah. So you mentioned like strategic changes and stuff like that. That kind of leads into a question from Danny, which was, if you could only use one type of software going forward, a tracker or a solver.
Oh, wow. Oh, I love squeezing out my results. I love not knowing how much I've won or lost, and then covering up the screen and then squeezing out how much I've won or lost. Yeah. And that means like I'm not allowed to like use somebody else's pie or study with them. It's like that's it. Let's just say for that argument's sake. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to have to go with a sensible answer. I'd have to be able to use a solver.
Yeah,
I'm acting like I use a solver every day, and it's just not even true. So, but yeah. I just think that I'd have to go for that.
Yeah, because it's like it used to be the HUD, right? Everything was on the HUD. It's like you had your statistical reads, and then I was just like.
I mean, do you remember my HUD that I had when I used to work with Big Chief DS? Big shout out to one of the old school boys. He hooked me up, and we became pretty good mates with our affection of note caddy stats. And I had to buy. I went through 6 PCs in 3 years because they were so intense on the CPU. And I had 1,000 stats, 500 for 6 max, 500 for 4 in, because you had to orient them for the number of players. And the detail of these stats, man, like when small blind limps, big blind ISOs to 4x, small blind re-ISOs to 13.5x, what their range was. I had like hand charts. It was basically just like botting for note caddy back in the day, and it's the most in-depth stats ever. So yeah, I'm certainly going to
for a while though.
Yeah, I mean,
I had a similar thing. I paid a guy to make like well over 1,000 stats.
I mean, I played for. I think I had one of my like in that period. I had one of my best years, and I pretty much just did what my HUD stats told me to do for like a whole year. I basically just like didn't really matter about blockers, about like how I was playing. If someone overfolded a spot, I just did this. If they bet the river in a certain spot, it doesn't matter, I just fold. It was crazy how reliant on stats I was back then.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more the other way. Like you can have all the stats you want on a reg now, but if they're just like playing sort of solver approach, it's like it's tough because it's like, oh, they bet the turn this often. It's like, well, what was the flop and what was the turn and what was the sizing? You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it matters less and less, I think.
It's kind of interesting though, because I reckon depending on your approach to poker would probably depend on the answer to whether or not hold and manage or Pio solver was like the most optimal highest EV kind of software choice. Because let's say, for example, you're like a mega bum hunter, like doesn't really like it's probably just more valuable to have like a more valuable to have like a detailed HUD, whereas like if you're playing zoom only, like HUD's probably not even that valuable. Like obviously it's valuable, but you're not getting that big samples that quickly, and like it's probably better to just have like a really kind of strong, solid game plan for that kind of style.
Would both of your guys be Pio as well?
Yeah, of course.
It would have to be. And like the way it's been going, like a few years ago I would have said HUD, and now we're maybe like, do you know what I mean? It's like the solver's getting more and more relevant and the HUD's getting less and less relevant. So it's based on direction.
From a longevity of like career standpoint as well, Pio just has to be the answer, right? Like if the games are getting tougher, it's like kind of one of the only real solid ways to improve.
I feel like that's a really, I want to ask both of you now, how much longer do you think you're going to be able to make money from poker?
Oh, long fucking time. Genuinely, I think it's a long time. Like,
we're talking like 10 years, 20 years?
Like people love to gamble. Yeah, some people will know I did like a little bit for BBC, maybe like 5 years ago or something.
I showed that to my girlfriend yesterday.
Right.
It's so weird you mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like, and at the time, Pio was kind of new and ramping up and stuff, and I was very much thinking like, this is the end, you know. It's like, you know, because there will just be. I thought online poker would go like online chess, where it's like if someone wants to, they can just cheat you really easily on the side and to beat them. But it's totally not gone that way. Like the action now is better than it was then. It's like absurd. And like, yeah, people love to gamble. That's the other thing. It's like the number of people who are just in there. And like, I think the number of people in the world who have an amount of money that they just don't really care, like about whatever playing, even high, like if you look at high stakes, there's Chinese boys and Malaysian boys who just like play for whatever amount of money and they just don't care, you know. And I think the number of those types of people is increasing. And gambling just as a general thing, it's like, you know, most of my friends gamble. Well, if there was sports running, they would be gambling on it. And I'm always trying to say to them, like, look, you should, you know, because they just use the bookmaker that has the app that they like, and they could get better odds elsewhere, and they know it, but that they don't care about that. They just want to have a fiver on the football, you know. So it's like people just aren't built to think in terms of like EV, and I think the thing of people gambling is just not going anywhere. So.
Well, maybe a better question is how much longer do you want to be playing poker for?
That's far more complicated, I think. Much tougher to answer.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping one day that I could, like, basically, I was kind of thinking about this not so long ago, about like earlier this year, end of last year. I was kind of feeling like my time was like, I was spending, obviously dedicating tons of time to poker, but in terms of like what I wanted to be doing long term, it was kind of tricky to say for sure that this is what I wanted. So I was kind of thinking about like, where might I transition out, and like really struggling to come up with answers. So my approach at the moment is to just kind of like be very open to trying new things, and like trying to kind of expand my life outside of poker, whether that's like picking up new hobbies, or like kind of reading books about different topics that you're interested in but you're not kind of knowledgeable about, and then hopefully in the future something might present itself, or you decide, look, I'm not about this anymore, I'm going to look to retrain, and this is the direction I want to go in. So that's kind of
I really like what you said there, because I think when I ask that question to other people, quite a lot of the time they say, I'm just going to see what happens. And like, that's very different to I'm not going to actively look for the next thing I'm going to do, but I'm going to passively like increase my knowledge about certain, like a whole array of other things, and see what kind of takes me, and then work on that. Yeah, I think I had these conversations quite a lot recently with different poker players about the kind of the idea that I'm playing poker now and this is great, and I need to keep studying and I need to keep working on my game to keep beating the games. And then after that, they're always looking to like another time after that, then I'll do this, then I'll do that, then I'll try find something new. I think it's so from my own experience, so important to learn about the thing you want to do now. And while you're playing poker, like poker players, you're not going to have all the money you have now, right? Forever. Like, while you have money, while you have freedom, while you have so much time compared to anyone else, is like the perfect opportunity to do that, for sure. I think it's really, really like a trait of poker players, just to kind of be quite content with how things are, and then not really push a bit harder.
Yeah, it's like a chicken egg problem, right? It's like when the opportunity you've been waiting for comes up, a bunch of people will already know a shitload about it, and you won't, So it's like, it's going to pass you by unless you're ready.
I would say, but I'm certainly guilty for that as well, and massively. Like the mental game coaching stuff, I mainly put the website together when I was in a downswing. And then as soon as I got out of the downswing, I was less motivated to do it. So like, I kind of even noticed that within myself, even though I've done more stuff while I've been playing poker than other poker players, I still notice my propensity to be like, when things are going well, when I'm making money, I don't need anything else. This is great. This is this is all I need, which is just like a fallacy that I tell myself when I'm doing well, like very results oriented.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So also kind of related question from Daryl, who's just rinsed you in the comments.
Great.
I was biting my tongue, so I didn't laugh.
Outrageous from there again.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah.
He said, wow, Ben is completely balded. Unkind.
He's already been giving me chat.
He asked on Twitter an hour ago, how much to never play another hand of poker again? Big number, small number, medium number?
Probably like a medium, big number. Probably like, I just love the games. I love playing the game.
Yeah. The big tourney comes around, everyone's like,
exactly,
jump in. You can't even get in. Oh, no.
Probably like 750.
Well, what do you think, Psek?
Less than that. Not because I enjoy the game less. I do really still enjoy the game, but 750 to me is a pretty big number. I don't know. It's hard to put a figure on it, because like, if tomorrow someone handed me that check and deactivated all my accounts and my ability to make new accounts, then it's like, okay, we're in a position where now my life is just like kind of grinded to a hole, and I've got to take a direction somewhere, So like, now it's probably a bigger number than when I get closer to the time where I might have a direction I know I want to go in the future, right? So I don't know, maybe like 400K or something, I guess.
All right, Ben, we're starting a GoFundMe. It's called Get Psek off the fucking table. I'll chip in
400K.
$100.
I'll chip in $100.
I think
What's your number? What's your number, D?
It would be, I think, between those two. Am I allowed to? I guess I can't really coach if I can't really play.
I mean, you'd be a fish if you couldn't play.
Yeah, I don't know though. I know what the fish think. Yeah, I think maybe like 600. If someone really offered me $600,000, I'd be like, yeah, right.
The only reason mine's that high is because I just would want to be able to play. I just want it in my life. So that would be the main reason.
Yeah. Daryl's other question was, if you had to have 50% of the action of a member of the extended UK crew for the next 5 years, who would it be? They never know you have the action. Rakeback doesn't count as profit for them.
Oh, rakeback doesn't count. I was gonna.
Ish is in the bin then.
You were gonna say Ish
I was almost gonna snap by Frank because of the guaranteed rakeback.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's got to be Cam, right? Surely.
Even without the rakeback, you choose to Cam.
I mean, I don't know why you guys are shit talking one of your boys, one of your main coaches.
I'm not shit talking him. It's just a fact of playing on party that a large proportion of the winnings come in rakeback.
Yeah, I mean, I expect Cam table winnings. EV is probably the highest out of any player. Consistency of volume. Excuse me? What?
Linus is in the extended UK crew, lad.
Oh, I thought you said UK crew directly.
Extended UK crew, he says.
And all Linus does is boulder now anyway.
Well, the thing is, you can't say Linus, right? Because there's just some chance that, like, I guess over 5 years he's not going to lose. But, like, yeah, he just could be like, oh, I have to sell everything I own now because I have to play. Or, like, Linus plays another 4 months and then just becomes pro boulderer and is somehow down like 200K or something.
Yeah.
This rate,
no, I definitely go Ishtar
as well. He's big on the chest grind. Big on the chest grind since Corona's come around.
Who?
Yeah, I heard he beat you, Patrick. In fact, I think you told me he hasn't played the Boy Wonder yet, though. So
are you as good as chess as your corridor?
Is that me? I'm all right. Was I good at corridor or shit?
You're pretty good. Yeah, you're pretty good.
I'm like okay at chess. It's like I figured out that you just like the blunders. Just cutting out the blunders is like all it really is, you know.
Yeah.
It's like guys are pretty shit. We'll just hand you pieces. Yeah. So also while we're talking gay UK crew, Marcus has asked who's the best and worst mental game player in the crew.
Oh, that is such a good question. Okay, so if we're just taking mental game as your attitude when you're playing poker, not how it impacts the way you play, Ishtar is 100% the worst. Because like he's got some problems when he plays, but in fairness to him, he gets impacted by how bad his mental game is less than any person I know, even more so than like Steve. Seriously, I mean, his consistency and his results speaks for themselves. Like, you don't get a graph with no variance unless you're playing perfectly all the time. So yeah, I think that's the case. In terms of the worst mental game resulting in how people play,
you're gonna have to bang someone.
Yeah,
I know. In terms of when they're tilted, I mean, I've seen Smith punch his monitor before, and I've heard he's broken at least one other monitor and numerous mice. So I'm gonna unfortunately, my boy Smith, I'm gonna have to go. Worst mental game is Smith in terms of impacting how they play.
For anyone who doesn't know, these are two Ben's two ex-housemates.
Yeah, I know, right?
Cam best, but also kind of worst, and Smith worst.
Yeah, I mean, I
can't believe you didn't say Stevie for best. It's kind of outrageous.
Stevie's got an unbelievable mental game.
Yeah.
He's if you could kind of download his mental game, I think that would be the thing you would want to teach every poker player. I wish I could. And I spent a lot of time with Stevie, and I've asked him a lot of questions. I've tried to do my research on use him as a subject.
Yeah.
But he it's some. I don't think it's nothing to do with poker. He's just, that's in his character. He's just very, very kind of
sturdy.
Yeah, very internally sturdy. Yeah, very sturdy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I lived with Stevie for like more than a year. I don't think I ever heard more than a sigh out of him while playing, even though he's like playing, big boy games and stuff. And you would just never know, like whether it's going good, whether it's going bad. He would just never mention. And like, meanwhile, I'm so wrapped up in my own results, and he's like, "How's it going, man?" He's like looking out for me, It's just like
he's lost like 40K in a day or something.
Yeah, sure. It's like, whatever, fine.
Yeah. No, he's got a really, really strong mental game. Frank's mental game's terrible as well, but I think we know that.
Well, it's kind of weird, right? Because like, it's like based on how you measure it, because like I kind of feel like the cost of a bad mental game is more like that you just avoid playing, Where unlike Frank, he like hates everyone he plays against, and he doesn't like, he plays super long sessions and super high table count and stuff like that. You could argue that it's like costs him money and whatever, but like he still turns up and plays fucking however many hours a day that he plays, which is a big old number, So like,
but I mean, to me, when I hear you say all those things, you're just giving me a long list of weak mental game traits. Plays loads of tables, plays loads of hands, plays loads of hours, battles anyone. Then the battling anyone, not so much. It depends at what cost. I can kind of get on board with that one. I know Frank extremely well, and so do you. And he doesn't eat when he's playing. He stops breathing. Have you ever heard his squeaking? No, he does this really high pitched, like as if a balloon is slowly releasing air.
What? all you can hear is thousands of mouse clicks and shit.
I heard that he had like a little blow up when Darryl was doing a podcast with somebody else. Didn't he shout that he like wrecked someone? Was he playing League or something like that?
I think it was just, I think I watched the podcast and it was just like all of a sudden nothing happened. The boys were just chatting. It was like, I hearing this, and I was like, would you mind? Maybe it's kind of loud. And he's like, no.
It's kind of live at the moment. Yeah. Darryl has a very good mental game as well. I haven't spent a lot of time with Darryl though, watching him play. I think that it's very easy to show up and have good mental game on occasion. And it's very easy to have the kind of outlook that my mental game is really strong. You usually hear that when people have been in upswings and then they lose like 10 buy-ins in 2 days and they're like, didn't tilt at all. Like my mental game's become so strong. And it's like, no, you built up so much resilience and like confidence that it doesn't phase you or knock you. I think like catching people, I think there was one of the questions as well around like, what was it about when your game is at your worst or something like that. I think that's when like your mental game is tested at your worst points, when you've been losing for 3 months in a row and then you're playing another session, how you show up in those kind of circumstances.
Yeah, this is definitely a thing as well, because I used to think my mental game was super strong. I was playing like, I guess about 18 months ago, I was playing mostly 200 NL still, and I just had like a really high win rate, and I was like, yeah, my mental game's solid. I can look at my results every session. Like, wasn't having downswings, and I was like, yeah, this is great. Tried to move up to 400, lost 30 buy-ins in 5K hands, and then didn't play 400 again for like 7 or 8 months, even though I was still winning at 200 at like a strong win rate, and it just, in dollar terms, probably cost me like fuckloads because I just didn't handle it. And I think, until you're actually swinging, it's difficult to say whether or not your mental game's strong, and you can like kind of lie to yourself, say you're not results oriented, all of this sort of stuff. But whether or not that's true is kind of hard to say until you go through it.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point.
G, I'm playing with everything. G was saying, well, kind of, have you been following the Galfond challenge, the Phil Galfond thing?
Yeah, I have a bit.
Yeah. So G was saying, like, well, he's asked the question here: how do you reduce the effect of short-term results in perception of your opponents and your own ability? And like, kind of related to that.
Your voice is cutting out.
Oh, sorry. Well, basically, like when Phil started off the challenge and he was losing really heavily.
Sorry, the internet went bad. Then I didn't hear what you said.
Oh shit! Can you hear me? Okay, Patrick?
I think it might be your end, Ben, because Donald's still clear for me.
It feels like it's okay now.
Cool. Well, basically, it's like when Phil was losing in the Galfond challenge, I was like, oh, Phil hasn't played in a while. He's probably doing pretty bad.
Yeah.
And now he's like nearly even, and it's like, oh, maybe he was a beast this whole time. You know? And it's like, even after so long playing the game, I still like short-term results still feed into how I think about someone's ability level way more than it should, you know. I guess it's PL. I don't know, but like, you know,
it's true. But I think you're speaking to like such a key element of variance and the way in which the poker community perceives variance. Because even though like so many people say they have a strong mental game, when variance hits, it's as if for most people that the kind of resilience that they built up is just kind of disregarded or thrown out the window. And I think that I heard so many people, PLO players, Hold'em players, saying exactly the same thing. Phil's like behind the times. He's jumped into this thing. He's got Venue's got a huge edge, and it was like what, like 10k hands, 8k hands, and it was like a couple of mistakes that may well have been induced by, I don't know, some kind of emotional difficulty of playing. But yeah, it's so easy to read into these short-term results and kind of overestimate skill edges in short samples, for sure.
It's interesting because when we were all kind of in Vienna, we were railing the Galfond challenge, and there was a bunch of us, and we kind of had a conversation about this, and we were sort of saying like, yeah, blah blah blah, Phil must like whilst it's most impossible that he's, you know, losing at this clip, because he would have to be a genuine whale for that to be the case. Like he's obviously running badly to the extent it's difficult to say. And something I found really interesting was that on Twitter, he made like a really long post. Maybe you guys read it, maybe not. But he kind of said about how if he was unaware of the results and he had to guess who had an edge based on the hands they played, even though he was minus 800k at this point, he thought he still had edge, which is like, it's like a massive claim to make
at that stage.
It's like, yeah, it's a huge claim to make, and now he's like kind of back nearly even. Maybe there was some grounding to what he was saying, maybe not. Obviously, it's impossible to know, but I think it's like kind of, yeah, it's kind of mental.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he wins.
Yeah, so
much. And also, I think it's important to have some thought for Veni Vidi Vici. Like, this is going to be extremely difficult to take and to manage and to hold. Like, I don't know about you guys, but it always hurts way more to be up a shit ton and lose your profit than it is to be at evens and then to lose.
Yeah.
And like in an age of like solvers and not really, and trying to disregard all of like the illogical factors, like momentum certainly is playing a factor here, and particularly in some of the hands that Vinny's been playing, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I feel like we want to know.
If you asked Venny at the start of the challenge, 18k hands in or whatever they are now, like, would you be happy with being plus 200k? He would snap your arm off, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Definitely. That's such an important thing to say, yeah.
Yeah, like, but because he was nearly plus 1 mil and now he's only plus 200k, like, that shouldn't have a difference on us, like, on how it feels to us, I mean, if we're being like perfectly logical. But it's just impossible as human beings for that not to have an effect. Like you say, I have a session and I know I've just sun run the first part and then got cooled like 6 times off the back of it, and like maybe I win one buy-in, I'm like livid. But if like I grind it out or whatever and then win one buy-in at the end of the session, feel like I haven't run great, it feels kind of good. It's just kind of bullshit, kind of nonsense. It's just the order that things are happening, which is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, like, between us, we've been doing this, like 25, 30 years. And we all know that like we have a recency bias and that we like to tell ourselves a story about what's going on. And we all know how sick variance can be, like when you've played a few million hands and stuff. And yet we still feel it. It's like it's an absolute, you know, it's like, I don't know if you're ever really going to get to a place where it literally doesn't affect you and you never have a doubt, you know. It's like,
well, it's an impossibility, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So. Just something that you kind of just have to live with if you do this for a living.
Yeah.
What else have we got here? How much? I thought this was kind of an interesting question. How much does a player's style show in today's games? If your play, and then another question: if your play style was an emotion, which would it be? I don't know if that should mean emotion or emoji. Emojis may be a better question.
No, emotion. Come on, you're talking to a therapist here. It needs to be the emotion. So wait, the first question was, how can you?
Yeah, like how much does a player's style show in today's games? Style is still a thing, right?
Yeah,
it's like we all use solvers and stuff, but some people have like winning red lines. Some people like to play this kind of player, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, people still have strengths and weaknesses, even though we have this.
I think it's a lot more nuanced than it ever was. I think that you just fundamentally, and also, I mean, we'll remove recreational players from this question because obviously there's a whole range of recreational players. But even within the red community, there are definitely people who are going to be perceived as nits, and people are going to be perceived as like super loose aggressive. I just generally think that as far as like before, if like tight was over here and loose was over here, I think tight is now here and like loose is here, and it's just like a much shorter or like narrower span of player types. Yeah. And as for my play style, emotion for my play style, I would say, I don't know. I would say still.
Emotion is a tough one, man.
I would say still.
You're feeling still.
Quite still. Yeah. What about you guys? What would your emotions be for your play styles? Erratic.
Angry face. Head explosion.
Head explosion. That's a good.
I prefer the emoji question, so I'm just answering the emoji question.
The one in the lab coat.
What do you think, Psek?
I have
an emoji or an emotion.
An emotion. I don't know. I can't come up with an emotion.
I love how difficult it is to find emotions.
Emoji's easier, I think. Like.
He would have said emoji if he meant emoji.
I guess.
No, I guess emoji. I'll be like ninja or something. I feel like I'm sneaky.
Clean.
Yeah.
Secret.
I think that it's really funny seeing all of us kind of struggle to come up with a bit of an emotion, because as part of the mental game coaching that I'm doing with my clients is like really trying to engage with that part of the brain that isn't the logical side of the brain. And it is really difficult for people to kind of be able to kind of perceive the emotive part from the logical part and be like, what are emotive words? Like, how do I feel when I lose like an all-in? Or how do I deal with conflict in day-to-day life? Like, what is my emotional response? So it's funny seeing us all struggle there, because it's so like, I don't know, a common trend with all poker players, I think.
We have some really early questions about, I think it was Big Steel actually. It was like, well, I guess it would be fun to just go over a history of some of the gay UK crew bets. Some of the gay UK crew bets. Yeah, we got tennis bets, we got thrice.
Oh my god, the tennis bet, bro.
We got penalty bets, you know, people love hearing about these. So let's go over some highlights of these.
Okay, did you say Big Steeler asked the question?
I think it was. Well, he was asking about thrice, and then keep you up hustling.
Well, we'll share the Big Steeler bet first. The Big Steeler bet was, we were out for brunch, and I'm not very good. I'm a goalkeeper normally. I'm not very good. In fact, I'm very bad out on pitch. I'm okay in goal. And the bet was, I remember when I was a kid, I was able to do like 100 kick-ups. And I spent that holiday where I was outside doing kick-ups. I remembered I could do it. And since then, I've been okay at doing kick-ups. Terrible at controlling the ball. Terrible at free kicks and penalties. I can keep up pretty well.
Okay.
And we were at brunch, and he basically proposed, or we were talking a little bit about whether or not we could propose a bet of me doing a keepy up bet. And Bertie, being fairly Bertie, came out with an outlandish, I bet you can't do 100 kick-ups, to which he said, let's do evens on $1,500. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So the bet was, I had from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening the following day to go down to a pitch with my GoPro and to do the kick-ups.
Yeah.
So I get down there at 8 a.m. and bearing in mind, to walk there, it's like a 10-minute walk. I was back home with the footage and back in bed by 8:25.
No.
having won this bet. I think I did it like the first attempt I got like 65, and then like third or fourth attempt I did it, and then that was it. So that was one of the bets.
One well.
The second one, I think the bet with Peter 804.
This is a classic.
It's just mental, isn't it? So my mate Peter 804, he's like really, really good at tennis. I'm not very good at tennis. I can like play a little bit. And he's been playing since he was like 6, like at a pretty decent level. And one day we were bantering like in our first house, we were like 19 or 20, and I decided that I wanted to bet him that I could beat him in a 3-set tennis match. And he was like, there's absolutely no way you'll ever do it. And I was like, okay, what odds are you going to lay? And being young and a little bit stupid, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he laid me 3,000 to 1. I think that was the answer that he laid. Yeah, I know, right?
1,000.
Yeah, I think my risk was $3. It was like my $3 is like 9K. I think it was something like that.
No, I think it was more. I think was it not like he ended up buying out, right? Because it was like
no, it was his 30K, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot. Like he was on
30K to my 100.
Yeah,
that was what it was.
Okay, so 300 to 1, right?
Yeah, it was something ridiculous. It was either 10 to 30,000 or 100 to 30,000. It was like 300 to 1, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sure, let's do it. So I had a year I had it all planned out. I had already organized. I was going to get a trainer. I was going to be training like 3 times a week. And part of the stipulation was I could challenge him to a match whenever I wanted, and he was only allowed to like decline if it was like he was out of the country, if he was ill, if he was like at his parents' house or whatever. So he had to always play when I wanted to play.
Okay.
And we're like, okay, sure. So I had it all organized. I got my like sorting out my coach. So the next day rolls around, and like his room's upstairs, and he's like, oh, like Ben, like, can you come up here, please? So I was like, Brian, I was like, yeah, sure. Like, what's up? I sat out and I walked upstairs to his room. He's like, all his tables were sat out. He's like 4 Zoom tables and his regular tables, and he was like, oh yeah, like I've just been trying to grind today, and like I just can't. This is like 12 hours after we made the bet. We both posted about it on our blogs. He's like, I just can't concentrate. Like I'm too scared. Like I'm too scared that like I'm gonna have to be playing this game out. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pay it out if I lose. And like I was just like, all right, like fine, like let's just cancel it. I didn't ask him for a payout or whatever. We just kind of cancelled it, and we chalked it up as just an extremely embarrassing moment for him. It was pretty great.
BG's not the biggest high stakes gambler. He's definitely like nit by nature, so I can imagine.
Yeah, but he did come 5th in one of the Sunday Million.
I remember that anniversary.
Anniversaries, yeah.
I have a friend actually who agreed to swap a piece with him in that, but eventually didn't end up registering. So he didn't play, and I think they swapped like 5 or 10%. So
shit. I think I had some percent, like 1 or 2% or something.
But yeah, they'd agreed to swap in this, one of his esports friends, I think. And then, yeah, he ended up not playing, obviously, when he wrote like...
those are the 2 main prop bets that came around.
Yeah.
And there have been numerous penalty bets with Gazi B as well.
Yeah, what was it, 3? 3 so far?
Yeah, 3. He's won 2 and I won 1.
Oh, well. But you have odds in your favor most of the time, right?
You got to score like 80. Yeah, first one you had to score 79, then you had to score 81, and then it was 80 or something like that.
Yeah. George asked how many penalties you'd save if Cristiano Ronaldo took 100 penalties.
I imagine I'd probably save 1.
You think?
Probably. I mean, that's with him not like if he hit the target every time.
Yeah.
No, I think he'd probably hit the woodwork occasionally, but like, or maybe like once or twice, and then I might save like 1 if it went the right way and he hit it badly. What do you reckon? 0?
Yeah, definitely 0.
He just
smashes it. He just like hits it really hard. You don't save it. Surely, right? They do all this like stutter run up shit, and you're just gonna like go the way you're gonna go, or you're gonna take a little step or something. He's just gonna put it past you every time, right? Sure.
Variance, man.
I would say it's more like 7 or 8, I reckon.
Nah, you're living in a dream world if you think it's 7 or 8, mate.
Because, like, surely if you go the right way, right? If you go the right way, you're maybe like 25% equity to save it, right?
No.
You don't think?
Do you play football?
Yeah.
Have you played 11-a-side? Have you stood in an 11-a-side goal before?
Yeah.
Have you had a ball kicked to you at like 80 miles per hour?
No, I can't say I have. No.
Like, he strikes the ball better than anyone in the world, right?
That's true. I reckon 1. He hit the woodwork maybe once as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think your equity for him missing the target is higher than you saving 1.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, G is saying he scored 82 out of 100 penalties in his career versus like professional goalkeepers.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but that doesn't account for like getting reads. 100 in a row, you get some reads.
That's true.
Oh, you think you get reads on him? That's what you're implying.
Well, I mean, hopefully you'd be able to. I don't know. Body shape. He's never taken 100 penalties versus a professional goalkeeper, so you can't really. You
might have done in training once or twice.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, someone's. We'll bring it back to poker and kind of. Oh well, I guess there was one thing that you were when we were chatting before we went live. You were saying that there was like a thing, because a lot of people watching this will be in quarantine and will be isolating and stuff. And I was wondering if you had like anything to help people kind of like keep their mental together, in quarantine. So what was
I mean, briefly go over the stuff that everyone kind of knows, which is going out and exercising if you can. Try and do that every day. Go for a walk if you can. If your country is allowing you to go out, like utilize that time you have outside. In my situation, I'm not allowed to leave the house even. So for me, I think as a general, so there's a thing that's kind of being passed around psychotherapy and psychology and psychiatrists to do with kind of helping people with their anxiety at home. So the acronym is FACE COVID, but we're going to just stay with FACE because that's just quite easy and easy for everyone to remember. The F is focus on what's in your control. So that doesn't mean focusing or controlling your thoughts, feelings, or emotions. This is specifically controlling your behavior, because that's the only thing you have control over to any extent. So like a good example of that is like, if you're in a boat and there's a storm, you can't stop the storm, but you can put an anchor to kind of like anchor your boat steady so it doesn't kind of like tip over or like get destroyed pretty much. So basically just focusing on like, you can't control what happens in the future, but you can control what you do in the here and now. So as part of that, there's like 3 other sections, which is ACE. So A is acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. I know this seems like super standard, but like for me, the way that I've dealt with some of my anxiety in the past few weeks, I've been aside for 3 weeks, has been to play poker. And while I'm playing poker, the anxiety seems to kind of alleviate and like drop away. But I noticed that after my sessions, my anxiety or the feelings within my body are kind of magnified, and they're kind of more potent after a poker session. I've noticed this a couple of times. I've woken up in the night feeling quite anxious, which I never ever do. So I think it's really, so the A, acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, is to really allow space and time frequently throughout the day, not just like once or twice, but like as often as possible, to acknowledge what the emotional landscape is. That's why I found it funny earlier when I was asking about emotive words and we couldn't really think of any because it's quite difficult, it's quite unfamiliar. And the way we do that, which is now C, which is come back into your body. So that is 2 good ways of doing this. You can do this now. You can be sitting on your chair and you can like push your thumbs into your fingers. So you can like, it's like remembering that you actually have a body, and remember that you can kind of come into your experience and it doesn't need to be cut off or dissociated from everything else that is going on, the anxiety. Another one might be to push your feet into the ground, to kind of like scrunch your toes up on the ground and kind of have your feet flat and tap your feet on the floor to kind of bring that awareness back into like your consciousness. I think that at the moment it's really, really, really easy to try and remain numb, to try and remain disconnected from everything that's going on, because it's too much, it's too anxiety provoking, it might be too painful. But I think that when available, we do need to connect to that as much as possible, because that's the only way we're going to survive being inside for such a long time and for things to be so different. And the last one, which is E, so that's the FACE, that's engage in what you're doing. So that basically means it's like a list of things you can do to ensure that kind of you're connecting with other people. I think that's super important. And this is mainly to do with like kindness. So what are like kind, caring ways you can how you can treat yourself as you go through this experience? I think this is a really like good question to ask yourselves like frequently. What are kind words you can say about yourself? Kind deeds you can do for yourself, whether or not that be something as simple as like having a bath, or like eating, I don't know, chocolate, or doing something like exercise, something you enjoy, or reading a book. The next one is, what are kind ways you can treat others who are suffering? So is that reaching out and kind of sending a message to somebody you know who they live by themselves? Is that messaging your parents? Is that signing up to like a group that's talking to people who are vulnerable? I think that's a really, really good way of managing your own experience of this whole situation, by connecting with others that you don't actually know as well as you do know. The other is like, what are kind and caring ways of contributing to the well-being of your community? So those of you that can leave the house, there are loads of apps. There's an app called Nextdoor that you can sign up to, and people who are vulnerable can post on this like bulletin board and basically ask, can we have groceries? Can you call me for a chat? Can you offer this, that, and the other? And I think that like for poker players particularly, like the only way that we kind of can really give back is giving money to charity most of the time. And I think that I think that's what most people do anyway, should I say. Most poker players, that's how they give something back. This moment now is actually, you can do a lot more of being able to connect with others and kind of making yourself available for others. And the last one, which I think is a really, really helpful one, and I think this applies to poker as well actually, is what can you say and do that will enable you to look back in years to come and feel proud of your response? So how are you going to look back at this period of I don't know, turmoil, let's call it, and how are you going to remember this period? Are you going to remember it as a period of lying around, sitting on your phone, doing nothing, just like passing the time? Or are you going to use this as like a time to grow and actually to develop in some kind of way? I also want to say a little disclaimer, just to add on to that, I think a lot of people are feeling quite guilty about the amount of time they're spending on their phones, watching Netflix, doing things to distract themselves. And what I want to say to that is like, this is a very unprecedented time. And this is very unusual and like uncharted waters, as I said before. But as equally important as it is to connect with your experience about what's happening, it is also equally valid to allow yourself to remove yourself from it via spending more time on your phone, watching more Netflix, doing things that make you happy, eating more junk food as well as healthy food. I think that it's really important to kind of not just feel like you need to be doing all of these good things, but allowing yourself and compassion to do the other things as well. Yeah. So that's FACE. Maybe I should type that up and put it somewhere so that people can kind of follow it.
Focus, acknowledge,
body, come back to your body.
Engage.
Cool. In what you're doing. Yeah.
So I guess last thing is to talk about your site and your the service that you're offering to poker players and kind of where you are with that. I think you mentioned to me just when we were chatting, you had a few clients that you were working with and that it was going well. And so tell us what's happening with that.
Yeah. So for the past few years, I've been trying to build up the knowledge, resources, and self-exploration to be able to contribute in some way to the poker community. And I'm now going to be launching my website where I'm going to be working with poker players in one of two capacities, either mental game coaching or psychotherapy. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin, to be honest with you, because it feels
there must be
broad.
some crossover. There must be a little bit of crossover between those two, right?
Well, I think firstly I want to say, as like a disclaimer, is that I'm not a qualified coach, and that the term coach is quite loosely used in most fields, I would say. There are professional coaches, executive coaches, and that kind of thing, but far more there are people who say they are coaches. Similar to the psychotherapeutic world, a lot of people say they are therapists or counselors when they actually haven't done much or any training at all. So that's like a disclaimer that I'm not a coach. However, as you said, there is a massive crossover between psychotherapy and coaching. I do have a coach that I see one-to-one who I have talked this through with in great depth. And she is very much of the mind that psychotherapy goes a lot deeper than a coach would go with their clients ordinarily. A coach is a lot more of a facilitative role in kind of working with what more like surface level strategy and that kind of thing. And psychotherapy is far more about understanding like behavioral patterns, ways of relating, and getting to like the depths and underlying factors of what makes us who we are. So yeah, there are some crossovers, and at the moment what I do is, and what I'm figuring out is I'm doing assessment sessions and then working with the person to decide which kind of direction they want to be taking their work or what they want to be working on. And what I have found so far is there have been quite a lot of crossovers, yeah. Yeah.
So are you taking on clients?
So at the moment I'm working with 3 or 4 people, and they're not paying at the moment, and this is a way of kind of doing research. And I'm not taking on new clients right now. I'm using actually today's platform as a little bit of a kind of a springboard to being able to launch my website as well. Mm-hmm. I will be taking on clients, yeah, in the very near future. People have to bear with me a little bit around kind of the way in which it works, timings. There's no pricing structure in place at the moment. I'm unsure if I'm going to be like on a sliding scale, depending on what stakes you play, whether or not there are low cost sessions for people who are unable to afford it, because I think it's really important to be able to offer those sessions as well. Yeah, so I will be taking on clients at some point soon. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll put the link to your site and also to your blog. Oh, did you say you were going to be moving your blog over, or maybe like dual posting or something?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be moving the blog over. Yeah.
Cool.
I actually just wanted to just bring up like a little side thing that's kind of to do with mental game coaching, but I think is important to say, mm-hmm. because I'm saying that I'm not a coach, and I think that's really important to put out there. Mm-hmm. I've noticed a lot within the poker community. I'm just going to talk quite generally. Mm-hmm. I've noticed a lot within the poker community that there are a lot of coaches. There are a lot of mental game people who claim to be mental game coaches. Mm-hmm. And just the same as there are a lot of people who say that they're counselors or therapists, I just really want to urge people to be really, really thorough with vetting the people that they choose to end up working with. Mm. Whether or not, it's the same as if you're working with me, vet me, definitely. But there are a lot of people who are making very bold claims about taking you into your childhood, undoing certain ways of being so that you can perform at your best. These are like, they're quite kind of, they're bold and pretty dangerous claims. And I think people need to be really, really, really careful going into something that can unearth a whole load of stuff that maybe the person that they're working with is unable to manage and unable to contain in a professional and kind of ethical way. And I've heard so many horror stories in the psychotherapeutic world of people being severely re-traumatized by practitioners who are unable to hold the frame in the way that they should be trained to. And I just want to kind of bring that forward as being quite transparent that I'm not a coach, but I am a psychotherapist. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you think that's kind of, do you kind of tend to, similar with the actual coaching, poker coaching thing, there's a lot of people who claim to be able to give you things, right?
Well, yeah, we sort of live in the Instagram age of poker, and people will like, it's not hard to go through a database, delete all the hands where you had 2-3-0, and then you've increased your win rate, and it's not hard to make a pretty looking graph. And be a little bit skeptical for sure about people who claim to coach. I would say with regards to like poker coaching, poker mental game coaching, it's tricky because you're right. It's not like a protected term. It's like nutritionist or whatever. Anyone can just be like, yeah, I'm a nutritionist. You can't tell me I'm not. But with regards to like poker, it's not like there's a professional accreditation body or something like that. So it's like, how could someone be a qualified poker coach, for example? Like, does from Upswing make you a qualified poker? Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's like,
true, and I think the poker coaching thing is like results speak for themselves, and like there are plenty of like kind of Russian poker tracker like website where you can check people's results and see their legitimacy. Whereas in the world of mental health, it's so easy to hide behind. I could say that I have a PhD and like probably be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to hide behind something that's not real and not true. And I think that actually, like, the worst that's going to happen with a poker coach is that you're not going to get any better. The worst that's going to happen with a mental game coach who isn't experienced, or a therapist who isn't experienced, is that could really mess up your life for a period or for a long time. And I think it's just quite dangerous.
Yeah, got to be careful out there. I would for sure endorse that 100%.
Yeah. But generally speaking, I'm going to be taking on clients, and I'm hoping to see. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. Really, yeah.
Cool. That's about all that I have. Sorry, Patrick.
So I was going to say, I've just noticed a couple people in the YouTube comments whilst we've been going through. They've been talking about meditation in poker. Is this something you do? Just like very quickly to touch on that before we finish, because I know 3 or 4 people mention it now.
Yeah, I think that briefly, meditation is great, and I think people can read up on meditation in their own time and understand the benefits. In terms of for poker players, I think that getting into the routine of a warm up and a cool down, and kind of creating that to best suit your style, I suppose. Different people work in different ways, but particularly before grinding, I think short meditation. I think setting intentions and goals for the session. Those are not monetary goals. They are not even like, I'm going to play X amount of hands. They are, I am going to, I don't know, take a breath. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to kind of do the FACE thing. I'm going to acknowledge my thoughts and feelings in certain situations. And what I really do recommend with the session goals is to write 3 emotive words as to kind of get in tune with your emotional landscape before you play, and then 3 emotive words after you finish your session, as well as reviewing the goals that you'd set out. That's like a very basic, simple method that you can do. Can I just say one more thing as well, Donald?
Absolutely, yeah, go for it.
Just with the mental game coaching thing again, is that I think just want to reiterate that working on your mental game is a long process. There's no such thing as like you can kind of have a couple sessions, you can get to the core of what the things are wrong with your mental game, and then like you're good to go. I think it's about chipping away over time and kind of working towards that kind of the goal that you have.
No quick fixes, right? No
quick fixes.
Shortcuts. Yeah.
Very much like the situation that we're in at the moment.
Yeah. Well, sadly. Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you. It's great.
Thanks very much to you for coming on, and I hope we can get you back on one day. But meantime, everyone go check out Kids' blog and Kids' site, which I'll post in the description.
The site is masteringmentalgame.com.
Masteringmentalgame.com. That was it. Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much, guys, and take care. Love to all your loved ones and stuff, and be safe.
Take care, guys. Thanks. See you later, Patrick.
Thank you.
Cheers for now. Bye.